introducing Kevin Gladish, who will be speaking to us this evening about healing through storytelling. Kevin has performed as a live storyteller in Chicago at several venues, including the Moth, where he participated in the Grand Slam. He's written for a number of adoption-related platforms, most recently for Portrait of an Adoption, and was featured on the Blood's Call podcast. Kevin is a late discovery adoptee. You'll be hearing more about that. And shortly after Kevin discovered his adoption by asking for his newly released Ohio birth certificate in 2015, he began writing a blog called A Story with No Beginning. You can find that on blogspot.com, Kevin Gladish, blogspot.com. That documented his discovery, his search for his birth family, and his struggle with his new identity as it all took place. The blog was recently adapted into a solo performance piece, which Kevin debuted at the Virtual Filet of Solo with Lifeline Theater in Chicago this year. The show is called A Secret in Plain Sight. It is currently running through March 7th online, and you can find the link to that on our website as well. Kevin originally was going to perform that piece at the conference that we had scheduled a year ago. We had a conference scheduled for the reunion of opening day, which was March 20th. And we obviously had to cancel that in pretty short order right before the conference. And so I'm glad to see that Kevin's work has a new life in this new format. We do have a couple of upcoming presentations beyond this evening. Monday, March 22nd, we're having a conversation with Eve Wiley, who's a donor-conceived individual, and she's going to be speaking on fertility fraud, the fertility industry, and genetic identity. And then on Monday, March 29th, a conversation with foster alumni and kinship caregiver Adrienne McLemore discussing when the personal becomes professional. You can see those on our website as well. In addition, next Monday, the 15th, we're having our discussion about the show This Is Us and its multi-layered adoption themes. And we also have a monthly family group and 6 monthly general discussion meetings that are all virtual at this point. So you can check that out on our calendar, and I will be posting the link to the calendar in chat as well. So with that, I will give you Kevin.
I went ahead and muted myself too. Hey everybody, I am really glad to be here, and even more glad that you're all here too. I see a few familiar faces and a couple familiar names, and some new people that I'm really excited to see. I got involved with the Adoption Network Cleveland pretty early on in this process, which for me was a recent one, being a late discovery adoptee. So and the group has been a real help to me. So my talk, I'm going to spend some time just giving you, as Betsy said, I do have like a long solo show that I put together that tells my story. I'm going to give you just, the first part of this, just kind of a truncated version of it. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and then transition into just how I used, writing and storytelling, the blog and performance, and which are things that I was already doing before, but that I kind of started to use to really kind of come to terms with things and figure out who I was in all of this. So, I am a late discovery adoptee, which means that my adoption was kept from me through my whole life, through childhood, through adulthood. And we're called LDA, that we have an acronym. And if you've never heard of that, congratulations, because I never heard of it either until I became one. I found out what I was when I found out I was adopted. So a lot of the identity things that people have talked about and that they've gone through, I kind of like started going through those at the age of 40. Or no, 43, I think, 43. And it was, when I say I'm late discovery, in my particular instance, you know, it was somewhat more of a late confirmation, because I had had suspicions that I was adopted my whole life. I had had, and in fact, the first time I had actually heard the word adopted, or that I can remember hearing the word adopted, was when I was a little boy. I think I was around 7 years old. And I remember playing in the backyard with a friend of mine who lived down the street. And for this one summer, we just hung out together all the time, and we played and we rode bikes and snuck through backyards and played with G.I. Joe figures and all kinds of stuff. And one day we were playing out in the backyard, and he just blurts out, "My mom says you're adopted." And I remember, you know, not having any, I'd never heard that word before. And I was, and it didn't sound good, right? I was like, what? Like, this kid is using this word, and he and his mom are calling me this thing that I've never heard. I don't know what that is. So, you know, my immediate, you know, reaction was to deny, no, I'm not adopted. No way am I adopted. And I remember just, it didn't, he said, well, that's just what my mom told me. So I remember it sticking with me. And I remember, you know, asking my mother later that after my friend had left, asking her, you know, what does the word adopted mean? And her reaction was that she got very upset that where did you hear that? Who told you that? Who told you that word? Where did you hear that word? And I got scared, of course, because I mean, this is my friend. I didn't want to rat him out. And I said, no, I think I made something up. I don't remember. I said, I think I saw it I heard it on TV. But she just kept saying, well, who told you that? Where did you hear that? Now, I never really got a straight answer, but all she said was, you know, your friend likes to make up stories. And that was something my mom would say if, you know, she didn't like what somebody had to say, or if she thought that they weren't telling the truth, or they were making up stories. I said, okay. I let it alone. And as a little boy, I don't remember consciously making this decision, but I know that at that point I decided that I wasn't going to bring up this word ever again, because it was clearly a bad word and it was a bad thing, and I'm not going to talk about it. And that went on for most of my adult life. And so what I did, you know, I sort of put it out of my mind. You know, I never quite forgot it, but I put it out of my mind. As I was growing up and, you know, going through life, little clues though would present themselves. You know, one of the stories I tell one of the stories I tell in my solo show is I was, you know, all the way up to college. I was dating this woman in college, and I went to the University of Dayton, and she was from Pittsburgh, and so one summer, the summer after we started dating, you know, I'm back home in Cleveland. We visited her in Pittsburgh, and she would come visit me. My dad would tease her, of course, because she's from Pittsburgh and we were in Cleveland, and you know, and she was a big Penguins fan. Didn't really get into the Browns controversy, but you know, she came over, and my dad did what my dad loved to do. Now, he had these photo albums that he created for us. They were volumes of these things that he had and I say us, my sister and I have a younger sister, 4 years younger, who was also adopted. And they had, you know, from the age of, you know, from a little baby on up, you know, he had these, and he would bring these out and he'd show them, and he would embarrass me in front of whoever I was seeing. And, you know, it was this, of course, my face would turn red, but the girl liked it and it was fine. And well, we got done with this, and I was in the living room with her, and we were sitting there, we had the book on our laps, and she just said to me, you know, you don't look much like your family. And I remember visiting her and her showing me all these photos of her grandmother and her great grandmother. And you see how I take after Aunt Julie, and you see how my sister takes after. She was very Italian and was very into her Italian heritage all the way back to the old country. And I remember when she would show me these, I would just feel very uncomfortable. And I had no idea why I was feeling like that. I was like, why is this? I'm not connecting to this. I'm jealous of this, but I don't understand it. And I just felt like there was something wrong. And when she said that, I just felt so embarrassed and exposed. And I said, I came up with this line. I said, well, I take after mom. My sister takes after dad, which if you looked at our photos, you could buy. If we were cast in movies, my mom and I could maybe pass as mother and son. My dad does not look much like me at all. I don't look much like my sister at all. All of these things were sort of just there in front of me, but I never really acknowledged them. I did in adulthood ask each of my parents at various times. When I asked my mother, I said, this is something that had been on my mind, and I just want to know. I still love you no matter what the answer is. I just want to know the truth. And she again got very upset and said, I don't know why you would ask me that question. And she pointed to, she said, you have a birth certificate. So you have a birth certificate. Everything you need to know is on that birth certificate. And she was right. I had a birth certificate. I was able to go to the closet and pull it out and read it. It said there were my parents' names on it. And when I asked my father, he didn't get upset. He just denied it. He said, no, you're not adopted. Then I said, well, you and mom are so much older than other people's parents. Well, we had trouble conceiving, but then we found a doctor, and he had a whole story, which I didn't quite buy, but what else was I going to do? At that point, I realized that if I brought up this word adopted, I would either make someone angry or I would get told something that I wasn't sure was true. Again, best to just not think about it. So that's kind of where I was. And what ended up happening was my life kind of took some turns. My parents both got sick at the same time. My dad had a brain hemorrhage. My mom started to lose her mental faculties to dementia. Neither of them wanted to acknowledge this reality, and neither of them wanted to move. It became a whole family drama that I was very ill-equipped to deal with. And what happened around this time was that my own life was falling apart, and I decided to quit drinking and get sober. And what that involved was connecting with people and asking for help and reaching out, and then also helping other people. And I got connected with a lot of people who were also working on their lives and trying to be better and trying to heal from whatever they were healing from. And through doing that, I met someone and I heard someone talk about being an adoptee and how that affected them and how that affected how they dealt with it in unhealthy ways. And this story was my story. Like, I heard it and I said, this is me. Even though I was still in this denial of I'm not going to deal with this, and I heard this story and something resonated. And at this point, my father had passed away. My mother had been, into her mind was really pretty far gone at that point. And I remember that night after hearing this person talk about her story about being an adoptee, I went home and I looked at those the photo albums that my dad made. And those photo albums I still have them, and they're wonderful. And I look at those photo albums and I see, a man who put so much time and love into creating these things. They documented my life. Like, I have volume 1 is my Kevin age 1, volume 2 is Kevin age 2. I mean, my sister has one too. And we have these things, and he put these in there And I opened up page 1, but there was something in that first page that just like, I couldn't process. Something made me uneasy whenever I looked at this. And I call this in the show that I have, The Secret in Plain Sight. I looked at the first picture and it said, and it was a picture of me in my mom's arms in the driveway. It's cold out. She's got a coat on and we're in the driveway and it says, you know, November 1972, home. And on the back, it says homecoming. Now, I was born in April. What happened to those months in between April and November? This is the first picture on the first page. And it was and I just, all of a sudden, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Could he have lost these pictures? Did he just, where was I during all that time? And why is it called home and homecoming? All of these questions. I looked at my birth certificate. I said, I got the birth certificate. That's what my mom said. You have a birth certificate. And then I noticed something interesting on there that I never saw before. Well, the doctor who had signed it in June. So I was born in April and the doctor signed it in June. Is that normal? Doesn't the doctor sign it like right pretty much soon after? I didn't know. So I started going online, searching all these terms, late signature, birth certificate, Ohio, and then I searched adoption. And somehow an article came up about the law that had changed because of this organization had lobbied and fought so hard to change. And I get a little emotional about this because that would never have, what I found would never have happened if not for that. And I found this article talking about how that law was going into effect and that that adoptees could find their original birth certificate. And when I read those words, original birth certificate, well, I didn't even know those existed. I thought there was just birth certificates. Now what is this? What do I have in my hand? You know, if there's a possibility that there's an original one out there. And so I found out that all I needed was a certified letter, a $25 check, I think it was all it costed, and I could request it. And I remember the time between sending off for that thing and waiting for it to arrive. I told no one. I didn't tell anyone that I did it. I had people I could tell. I had people in my life I could tell. I just didn't, because I couldn't handle the idea of being told another lie or finding out that I was wrong and feeling embarrassed and stupid. And maybe I would hurt someone else by bringing this up. Not until I had proof in my hand. And so when it came, that changed everything. I got the birth certificate and there it was. There was this name, this woman named Judy, who was my birth mother. The birth father was blank. And soon after that, it was not long after this, I found this. I think it might have been a month or two, was when I wrote my first blog post. And I had never had a blog before. I'd never been a blogger. And it really kind of came out of, here's this thing I know about myself. I talked to some close friends, some people in my life, but I'm like, all these people know me. All these people know, how do I bring this up? How do I bring this up in conversation? Do I just casually drop, oh, by the way, I found out I'm I was like, I'm just going to put this on Facebook. And, and I started writing this thing, and the thing that I wrote started turning into this really, really, really long thing. Maybe this should be a blog. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just and I thought, 9 people are going to read this. But I wrote what I discovered and what happened and how it felt when I got that first birth certificate. And I wrote it all. And it was raw. And it was emotional. And I look back at that first entry and I talked about how, I just never felt like I could look people in the eye before, because I just didn't know who I was. And now Now at least I can say, I don't know. Here's what I know. There's a lot I don't know. Instead of making something up, like I take after dad. I take after mom, Carrie takes after dad, like making stuff up. So I wrote and people read it, and people called me, and people wrote to me, and people commented, and people were like amazed that I wrote it. People were freaked out. People were worried about me. People were like, I got all kinds of reactions. And I kept going. Because one of the things I started to do, I really threw myself into the search for anything about myself that I could find. I didn't even know, if I had any idea. I didn't really have any conception of what I would do if I met anyone from my birth family, or how that would work. I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know because I had been denied this information for so long. And so I began searching, and again, people from this organization really helped me. And it was not easy, and there were a lot of dead ends. My birth mother, I found out through Catholic Charities. I got a report from Catholic Charities, and I found out through someone on this call who gave me a lot of help. Her name's Deb. And I found out that my birth mother was also adopted, and she spent time in the same birth in the DePaul Infant Home, which is no longer in existence. There was the DePaul Infant Home, which is where I was between April and November, those missing months that I didn't know where I was during that time that was missing from the photo album. That's where I was, and she was there too when she was a baby. And I learned all about her, and I learned that she had struggles and that it was tough for her. And I learned that I would never meet her because she had passed away years before. And I wrote about that in my blog. And that was a tough one to write about, because it was just, here I am feeling this grief. It was a real genuine grief, and anger at being denied the ability to meet her, and everything just kind of like coming out of me. And I never met this person, and I just wanted to know more about her. And I dove into this search for her, and she's still a mystery, man. She did not leave much of an online footprint, and there's still some things a lot that I don't know. But I really, I went on classmates.com. I found one of her friends in high school. I found out that she never had any other kids. And I found out that she got married to a man who was not my birth father, but and then I found out that both of them had passed, and they both lived in Euclid, I believe. And so I found all this out, and I wrote about it as it happened. I wrote about it. And it was this weird thing. Like, I wrote it like chapter 3, then the next chapter of my search. And it was all about finding information. It was all about finding these people. And eventually I would find out that my birth father had also passed away. And it would be, I got my birth certificate in 2015. And it was fall of 2018 when I first made contact with my birth family. And that was a half sister from my birth father's side. And it was partly because of that report that I got from Catholic Charities, and it was partly because of DNA. It was partly because of some help I got from people here. And it was years in the making, and it just took a while, but I found her. And it's been great. It's been really great. I have 5 half siblings from my birth father's side. I have not made a deep connection with all of them. They also have a complicated family history. And my birth father was a complicated man, but I have connected with a couple of them very well. And I and it's been amazing. But here's the thing. I had gotten so wrapped up in this search that I really thought, this is the thing that's going to fix me. I'm going to meet my birth family, and then I'm going to feel whole, and then I'm going to feel okay, and then everything's going to come together, and it's all going to be cool. And I'm going to see someone who looks like me. You know, my birth siblings, they look kind of like me. They're half siblings, and they, you know, even them, I'm like, I don't know. But we do. There's a couple of them that I do, and some that, you know, but it was great, but I needed other things. I needed therapy, and I needed this storytelling outlet. And so one thing I was doing also before this all happened was I had gotten involved in, I was an actor. Now I haven't done theater like plays in a while. I think my last play was in 2016. And but for a while I was doing this, like what they call, there's like the Moth. I don't know if you've heard of the Moth. People tell their personal stories. I got involved in that. I got involved in a lot of other, around Chicago, there's a lot of these venues where people tell their personal stories. And I had been doing this before. In fact, and a lot of them were funny. You can probably you can Google me or go on YouTube and put my name in there. You'll see there's some on there. And some of them were funny. My dad was in a couple of them because he's a very larger than life character. But the first time I told a story, I decided, you know, after all this happened, I decided I'm going to do one of these storytelling things. And I'm going to talk about this stuff. I'm going to get real. I'm going to talk about this. And I remember the story. I have a handful that I've written. And I think it was one about just learning and getting that birth certificate. And I remember the day I always have like a little bit of like normal stage fright before I get on stage. I've done a lot of theater. I always get a little nervous going on, but this was different. My mouth went dry. My brain was going blank. I was freaking out. I was like, I'm going to talk about this stuff, and all of these people are going to like get up and leave, and they're all going to hate me. And they didn't. And after that story, I got through it. I pushed through that, and I finished the story. And somebody came up to me and said, you know, I'm not adopted, but, you know, definitely I've had family secrets and trauma, and thank you. You really helped me. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it like that this is helping anyone else. I was just doing this selfishly for me, you know, but it turns out that telling my story actually helped other people. And I did it again. And each time I did it, it scared me. And I'm going to jump back a little bit, because after I got my birth certificate, I haven't told this story in my solo show, but I had a really good friend here in Chicago. And when I got my birth certificate, he was one of the people I told. And I remember telling him about this thing that had happened to me. And he was, of course, like I would be if anyone told me this. And you know what to say. He was shocked. He was like, wow. And then I'm telling him this, and he had to get off the phone for some reason because he was on his way to work or something. And he hung up. And after he hung up, I was convinced that I was going to lose this friend. Like this friend I never want to talk to me again because I told him that I was adopted. That's what my brain was telling me. Like, that's how deep the shame went. I was like, this guy is never going to want to be my friend again. And of course that wasn't true. None of that was true, but I believed that because I had, you know, internalized this. Like, you don't talk about this stuff. You don't talk. And so you don't ask these questions. You don't talk about these things. You're going to hurt somebody. And so in getting up on stage and talking about this stuff and writing it out, I did something that, you know, the thing that these things have in common, you know, as the reason I brought up the whole quitting drinking thing and connecting with people is because what I learned there is that I had to do things that were contrary to what I felt like doing a lot of times in order to heal. And what I feel like doing most of the time is keeping people at arm's length and hiding and telling everyone I'm fine and going into my little hole and just, and not letting anyone get to know me. And I found that I could not do that. And getting up on stage and talking and telling these stories and writing about what I was going through was another thing that was very contrary to what I had been doing, which was just to, keep my eyes lowered, not really telling you anything about myself, keeping you coming up with canned lines like I take after dad, or I take after mom, Carrie takes after dad, I couldn't do that anymore. And so in doing this, it really kind of forced me to be genuine. And the people that I was able to connect with through doing that, those were real connections. Those weren't like me making stuff up to entertain you connections and you just like clapping and saying, whatever, and then leaving. These were real. This is like, you're actually getting to know who I am. And that means everything. That means that I'm not, I sometimes I think when I write, I come across like I'm at peace with everything and I've like integrated all these things. But there are days when I'm furious and I want to scream and I want to like just throw stuff around the apartment and rage at the world, and I'm angry because of what it was taken from me. There are days when I am grateful. And that's a loaded word for us, right? You should just be grateful. Which means a lot of times you should just be quiet. You shouldn't ask these questions. You shouldn't feel. But there are times when I am, because I do have some great stuff that my parents gave me. But there are times when I'm sad, and there are times when I'm angry, and there are times when I have a need for more. And so, has everyone loved everything I've said? No. I've had a couple people in my adoptive family who have not loved that I've written in the ways that I have. They idolized my father. They don't think anyone should say anything bad about him. Even though I haven't really said anything, I haven't really said horrible things about him, but I told the truth. I told the truth about what happened. I've had other family members in my adoptive family say, you know what, good for you. And they were glad that I did it. And I've had other people react. I've had people react in various ways, and that's okay. That's okay. But by being able to be me, by being able to tell the story that's genuine, that I've discovered, I was able to be myself, at least, wherever I was at the time, and so I guess that's what the main thing I've gotten from how I've worked through this, and like I said, I've gotten some help through therapy, and I've gotten some help through support groups. I should mention I also am on a late discovery adoptee group on Facebook. It's a private group who someone in this group connected me with, and then when I go there and we talk, and that's where we can really just be real, when we're about to break down, or when things just seem really crazy, or somebody said something to us that just triggers the heck out of us. We can go there and talk about it, and we can say, yep, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I don't expect everyone to know what to say, because I wouldn't have known what to say. But at least I have people to go to about it, and I have someone to, I have people that I can bounce these things off of. And so finding those connections have been vital to me. And I feel like storytelling and writing, and this show that I just put together recently is part of that. And so, I felt like when I made up that line, I take after mom, Carrie takes after dad. I put up a wall, I put up this wall, and you stay over there and I'll stay over here and that. And whenever I talk about this stuff for real, like, that wall comes down. And for that, I have to keep doing it. And if the story changes, great. If it stays the same, great. I keep doing it. And that's why I do it. And so that's what it has done for me. I'm I cannot tell a story to a brick wall and get the same thing out of it. I need other people to hear it. And so I'm really glad you've all come here tonight, because just you guys all being here really helps me too. And I hope that somebody here got something out of this, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. And I think that is all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Questions for Kevin? You can go ahead and put them in chat. What else would you like to know?
I told Betsy if you guys didn't ask questions, I was going to come up with something for you. I was going to make you guys do something. So you guys, what is your process like? Where do you start? That's a good question. I think it's different for whatever venue I'm doing or whatever story I'm telling. Mostly I just start writing, and I see what comes out. I'm a big fan of free writing. I'm a big fan of I don't try to come up with the perfect thing and then wait for that perfect thing to come and then start writing about it. I'll just start the germ of an idea will come and I'll start writing. And then, I may throw a lot of it away. I may not use a lot of it, or it doesn't all come together, or I write too much and I have to pick what works, and all of that. And then I revise and then all that stuff. But I really just, when I feel I have something to say, I sit down and start writing it, and then I go from there. Let's see. Deb. Yeah, nice to know the rest of the story since 2015. I'm gonna call Deb out because she spent so much time on the phone with me at Catholic Charities when I got my non-identifying report, and I just kept trying to squeeze more information out of her, and she was just really, really great. And that's where I learned about my mom, my birth mom, being there. And lots happened since then. Curious about your younger sister, how you understood the way she joined your family. Yeah, your mom wasn't pregnant. Good question. I actually talk about that in my solo show, that when that's a big part of my soul. That's a big part of the show I didn't talk about. Talking to her was a big deal, because she and I had never acknowledged to each other. She's an LDA too. We never acknowledged to each other our situation. And there was, and I'll tell you, I don't like to tell her story, but I'll tell you this one because I already included this in my show. She, when she was a kid, she saw a picture it was a birthday party for me. Now, she was born in May. Her birthday's in May. So this was the birthday party that would have happened right before she was born. In other words, my mom in that picture should have been huge, and she was not. And so I remember she said she asked mom about it, and she got some story about, the date on there must be wrong, or she told her something, but we both sort of had the same sort of burying it reaction to these kinds of things. And a lot of this stuff is really, I grappled with this a lot as a late discovery adoptee. How much of it was out, that's why I called it a secret in plain sight, because how much of it was really, in retrospect, obvious. But because I was told the story, the stories we're told are so powerful, and you can look in the mirror. You believe the story you're told instead of what you're seeing in the mirror. And there was so many things that I could have seen along the way. I don't beat myself up about that anymore. Like, oh, how could I have not known? No, I mean, I know that I was told a story and everyone was in on it. So, how would I have known to question it? the questions did come, but they came later. And so, yeah, things like that, like, oh, she wasn't pregnant, like clues like that were everywhere. I just didn't, it's like the blind spot when you're driving. My relationship with my sister is really good now. It's better than it was before, because we are able to talk about this stuff. My adoptive sister, we commiserate a lot because we're both LDAs, we're both adoptees, and we're both LDAs. And this was something that we were not able to acknowledge before. And I liken it in the show to, like, the two of us were in solitary confinement in the same prison. And then we got out and we're like, you're here too? We're like, oh my God, you went through this? You went. And so, yeah, it's something we process in very different ways. She's not as into the search and all of that stuff, but she's very supportive of the things I'm doing. And we definitely have a better relationship because of this knowing. How has your sister adjusted to finding out she was adopted? I'm gonna probably leave this one only because I don't want to speak for her. But other than to say we were different, we adjust to things in different ways, and we deal with things in different ways. But I will say that we have a better relationship because we're able to talk about the truth to each other. And that has been really, that's been great. Let's see. Our stories have so many similarities. Thank you for telling your LDA story. Our stories have so many similarities. Did you say your sister also was adopted, or was she your adoptive sister? Also, how did you find that Catholic Charities was your agency? Thank you again for your courage. Thank you. Yeah, my sister we were both, though I think I've answered the first question. But the second one, I don't remember how I found out Catholic Charities was my agency, honestly. I don't remember how I found that out. I think my aunt told me. Now, here's a funny part of this story that I didn't bring. When I talked to my aunt, I was ready for a fight, because I called her and I said, I thought she was in on the secret too. And I called her and I told her, I said, I got to tell you, I said, I've got my original birth certificate and I know that I'm adopted. And her reaction was, well, yeah. I said, so I know now. She's like, yeah, you didn't know? Like, she believed I knew. And I was like, because her reaction was pretty genuine. She was shocked that I didn't think she knew that I knew. And that's how quiet we were. That's how much this was just, it wasn't even like a conspiracy of don't say anything. We just were a family that just didn't talk about this. And it just never, how it never came up, how this stuff never came up, I have no idea. But my aunt, I believe, now that I think of it, she was the one who told me that it was Catholic Charities. Oh yeah, thanks to you. There's a link here for the blog underneath the schedule for the other speakers. I discovered it first, or at least I made the move to confirm first. Yeah. As an LDA, I'm looking for information specific to our experience. Most books discuss adoption in general and not much is shared about the LDA experience. Oh boy, you're right. There is not much out there about this. And there's no handbook for this right now. It's happening. I think there are more people talking about it. I can connect with you and get you connected to that group on Facebook if you want. And people have started, who are there, have started writing. I think there's somebody in that group who has started to do some research on it, to find out like what effects this has on us. But yeah, there's trauma in, I believe, for many of us anyway. I can't speak for everybody, but I believe that there's trauma in being adopted and being taken from the birth mother. you know, however we adapt to it, or however I adapted to it. There's that. But then there was this other trauma of being kind of gaslighted, and not being told, and grappling with that, and grappling with my reality. And that needs to be dealt with and healed. And so I don't have, there aren't any books out there that I know of. If somebody knows one, let me know. But I think that the next best thing would be, you know, to go to that group, because there are a lot of people in there that are writing about their experience. Kevin, you've done an immense amount of work since 2015. Wow, congratulations for having the courage, fortitude, and persistence to work through these complex issues. Other than the LDA private Facebook group, where else do you find peer support? That's the main place. Here, I got a lot of support here. And I get a lot of support through just recovery community that I'm involved with. And those places have really helped. Yeah, that's been my main place I've gone. I really enjoy reading other people memoirs and stories. But yeah, the group, and I've connected in person with a few people from those groups the support groups that I'm part of. But LDAs are like all over the country, and so there's like only a handful in Chicago, and we found a few of us found each other. But yeah. Besides your NI info, that's not identifying, right? Info from Catholic Charities, were you able to get any other info like social service files? I'm in California and we are so close state, and I did get my non-identifying years ago, but really want to have my social service info from foster care and no idea how to get that. That I don't know. What I got was a report, a non-identifying report that just talked about me, how I was adopted. It gave me general information about my birth parents without names. And I use that along with DNA. I think DNA is probably the way to go, because, like, you know, if you're in a state where they're closed, you know, I could have found out without getting my birth certificate that I was adopted. I could have found out a lot of stuff. I wouldn't be able to find out everything, but DNA was what led me to find my birth father side for sure.
Kevin, there was one question that came in in a late registration. So let me share that. The person asked, do you feel that finding out that you were adopted when you were older was better or worse than dealing with it in childhood?
I have no idea how I would have dealt with it if I had known in childhood. I have no way to compare those two experiences, because, you know, one happened and the other didn't. All I know is that I was told when I was told. I firmly believe that keeping adoption secret is a very bad idea. I think that I know there are discussions around when a child should be told, but to not be told, even in adulthood, at some point, you know, I would walk into, for years, I went into a doctor's office and gave them someone else's family medical history. That's wrong. I think I can't really speak to exactly when, as far as child development goes. I'm not going to weigh into that, but I think at some point when a child is able to understand, they should be able to know who they are. There are two great, Jamie Tuss, two great LDA Facebook groups. Please, those are the names of them, or they're in the chat. Check them out if you're looking at that. The gaslighting is brutal. Yes, it is. The gaslighting is brutal because it stays with you. It's very hard. One of the things that I find very difficult about this, and this is why my answer to that question was so forceful, was because what it does, I feel like, you know, even if you don't tell a child that they're adopted, I feel like on some level, you got to know that something's wrong. On some level, you know that what you're being told and the reality that you're experiencing ain't matching up. Something's off here. And so, you know, when you have the experience of you know something's true, you know what's going on, you're seeing it, but you're being told that you're wrong, your reality is wrong. That's what gaslighting is. I learned that term, you know, it comes from a movie where about a woman her husband convinced her that she was going crazy and that the house was haunted and there were all these things and she was forgetting things, and so that he could have her committed. That's where that word comes from. But so it's not always that insidious. I don't really believe that my parents set out to gaslight me. I don't think they sat around and said, let's like mess with Kevin. I think, you know, they had their reasons for why they kept it from me. I will never know those reasons fully. I can only guess at them. But the effect of it, yeah, is that I often question if I'm right about everything. I often have to, you know, and David, you brought up support systems, and that's what I've needed. I've really needed to be able to, like, you know, I heard this thing, somebody said this thing to me, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. I don't know what that means. Like, sometimes I need people that I trust to sort of like help me get perspective, like, you know, because my immediate reaction is to say I'm wrong. I don't know what's real. And that's from years of being told that what I was experiencing was not true. So that's gotten better. Journaling has really helped. The writing, the telling the story, all of the stuff. All of the stuff has really helped me with that. And I'm on a lot more firm footing now than I was in 2015. And on more firm footing even then than I was probably 5 years before that. Yes. Let's see, my infertility pre-birth LDAs is going to be, I'm not sure what that means. Yes, cognitive dissonance, yeah. My adoptive parents divorced the same month the adoption was finalized. They stayed loosely connected over the years. When I was 14, my mom came to Florida from Rhode Island specifically to tell me that I was not hers. That was the whole point of her trip. Wrong on so many levels, and it impacted me negatively in many ways. Yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry that happened that way to you. And I feel like there's so much that hurts in these stories, whether we have a good family situation, a tough family situation, whatever. There's a lot some of these things are traumatic, and I'm really glad that this exists. These groups like this, as I think, you know, when you introduced this whole thing, it was about fostering community and fostering this sense of, so that we can hear each other, you know, and tell these stories. Even writing something like that in a comment is you telling your story, you know. And that was one thing I wanted to say. Like this whole storytelling thing I'm doing, not everybody has to do that. Not everybody has to go and write a book. Not everybody has to go and write a blog. Not everybody has to go and get on stage and talk. In fact, very few of us do that. You know, that's just what I do, because that was something I was already doing. That's just me. Like I found performance and writing to be my means of expression. But not everyone has to do that. But I mean, even right now, just hearing people on the chat talk about what they've been through is storytelling, is talking about it and being real. And so sometimes even just writing in a journal, you know, if you can find somebody you trust to talk, that's storytelling to me. Plausible use of coded language disorienting. Let's see, let me see. There was a time when social workers told adoptive parents to take their babies home, love them, and never speak of it. That was the school of thought, as was best. When we know better, we do better. Yeah, I didn't know if, because my parents, I assumed that they were told not to tell me, but then my aunt said that they did tell me and that they were told. So I don't know. Like, I think I know that there was some stuff out there at the time. You know, there's a lot of secrecy. That's another thing about this too. Like, you know, these traumas that they get to be covered up. I think the system sort of enables that. And there was a period of time when this stuff was very secret, as you all know. There was a lot of shame to it. There was a lot of shame involved in not being able to conceive and illegitimate children, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, we know better now. Did you find your emotional nature was different from your adoptive parents in addition to your physical looks? What do you understand about that if you were different personalities that you didn't realize growing up? That is a good question. That is a really good question. I don't know. I think I'm a lot like my dad. I'm a lot like my mom, my adoptive parents. I think, this really goes to nature versus nurture, right? I got a lot from them. And but there was an interesting thing that, when I met my birth siblings, my half siblings, when we finally met, I had this moment of, we were all met at a restaurant, and Tracy was she's the one that I talked to the most. We were on the phone a lot, but then we all got together and I sat next to someone else, and they had this little moment of her just leaning over, and she was putting tons of sugar in her iced tea. She was putting sugar after sugar after sugar. And she just leans over. She's like, I know I put too much sugar in my iced tea. And I'm like, oh my God, we're related. There was this moment of and I can't even describe it. It wasn't even the way she said it or the fact that you like sugar. It wasn't even that. It was just this moment of boom, it was just, okay, we're both, we're both got this little weird thing. And yeah, so there was that biological thing that kind of have these little moments that happen. And I know my adoptive sister and I are very different. My adoptive parents and I are very different, but we have a lot of similarities too. I don't know, but we grew up, years in that house together. So I guess I contain all of it. Speaking up as an adoptee is often seen as a failure, culturally deviant. I have lost friends talking about it. That stinks, and I'm sorry. That's true though. It is seen that way. Some people see it that way, and some people feel that's why I mentioned the word, grateful. It's this very loaded word for adoptees. You should just be grateful you were adopted, and don't, you shouldn't need to look for this stuff or talk about this stuff, or you shouldn't really be sad because you had such a good life, and all this stuff. And so speaking up, I have found, and when people get offended or upset that I'm speaking up, it's not about me, it's about them. It's about them. I'm making them uncomfortable for some reason. And I'm sorry, but it's not going to stop me from talking. So they maybe have some work to do, and if that person can't accept me, then that's fine. That's fine too. Leads to self-censorship. Most of my life was self-censorship, and I still have to push against self-censorship. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah. So I think that's the last. Did you just say last question? There's time for one more, or are we done now, Betsy?
I think technically we're done.
Okay.
So this conversation could go on forever.
It really could, and I'll just say thank you for the openness that I mean, it's weird. These things are just coming up in the chat, and it's just there's so much emotion behind them, and so much that's there that's not being said. Because you only have a little bit of space in there, but there's a lot of bravery going on here, just even in this. And I want to thank all of you who talked to me over this. And so, yeah, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. And I guess I just want to say, I don't know how many of you come to our general discussion meetings, but this is such a different format, and so much of the content is, I feel, in this format, bursting at the seams. And so if you want somewhere to come and talk and discuss and feel understood, please also come to a general discussion meeting. And this made me think maybe we should have a topic one night specific to late discovery adoptees. We do topics, and this sounds like it would be a really valuable one to have. I don't think we've done that before.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put that on the agenda. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, and especially to Kevin for such a heartfelt and engaging presentation. Really a great evening. As many of you know, Adoption Network Cleveland is a nonprofit organization serving individuals and families impacted by adoption, kinship, and foster care. We're extremely excited to be partnering with experts in our national, state, and local community to offer this Monday evening speaker series. In addition to the series, we have multiple opportunities for support, education, and advocacy. You can see that at our website. To find out more about our organization, to support our work, please visit our website, adoptionnetwork.org. We are a membership organization, and we hope that you'll consider being a member to help to support the work. Please join this series in 2 weeks on Monday, March 22nd, when we host Eve Wiley discussing fertility fraud, the fertility industry, and genetic identity. I did notice that that actually came up in the chat in terms of lies told and consequences, and very similar parallel issues related to artificial reproduction and fertility issues. And I know that Eve will be getting into some of that. Next Monday, we do have the This Is Us discussion group. And like I said, we have the parent support group and the general discussion meetings throughout the month. So with that, I thank you, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks for coming.